Yep, understood.
Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance to order for Monday, October 21st, 2019. First item on the agenda, as usual, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? Item number 2, approve minutes of the regular meeting minutes of September 16th, 2019. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments, corrections, discussion? You didn't miss much. You're good. I didn't see anything to be noted or corrections, so. Anybody?
Just under section.
Not this time.
Not this time?
Under section 5, where it says Mr. McKenzie said the monthly line for a finance review is 60,000. I think it's just supposed to say it was 30,000 in July. It just says it as. So we just have to add a W.
Okay.
That was the only thing I found.
Okay, if nothing further, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
Thank you, John. Item number 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. These are from their October 1st meeting.
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken. I was just seeing if there was anybody in the audience from the standing building.
Oh.
The Board of Ed is here too. Usually, actually, Ted Sands was here last month and was able to answer some of these, but if we need to, we'll just bring him back. Go ahead, Ken.
Item 7,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reference to identifying some control issues now that we're getting into the heating season. And I wondered if we can get some clarification or expansion of that.
Yes, I actually had a couple questions myself on that. I was wondering, there was a comment in here about having not received a response yet. Mr. Gurnham had asked Johnson Controls and hadn't received a response. I was wondering how long that response was being waited on or for. But then there was a meeting scheduled the next day to discuss issues and concerns. And I was also wondering what the status is. So that's something we could just bring to the attention of the chair of the building committee, or I could reach out to Cliff Gurnham and get an update, or Linda, if you want to do it.
I know that they are meeting on Monday, next Monday, the 28th.
Okay. The building committee?
No, Cliff with the
Oh, okay.
Johnson Controls and ECG.
Okay.
I don't know any further than that on where they are with the status.
Okay.
Can we find out?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, could you just let Cliff know that the Board of Finance was curious as to the status, and if it needs to wait until next week after that meeting to give us a status report, that's fine, but we would like to know what's going on in that.
And
Because obviously we want to know if we're experiencing savings and what's going on if we're not. So,
also had a point on item 9.
yeah.
The generator issues at Jones and whether we were in good shape going through the year. There's some question as to whether there might be a problem emerging during the year where the generator needs to be down. And I noted that the fire department is volunteering to support the school in case there is an emergency. I just wondered how dire this prediction is.
The way I read it is just it's supplemental in case something were to happen on a power outage. That's all it is. The HVAC upgrades are being bid out. They're supposed
They're
to be
not
bid
going
out
to
in
do it
October.
until the summer.
They're not going to do it until summer. Some work is going to be happening, I think, over the break, it said, in December. Was it January? Some of the work was going to start, or December? The generators are just to have a plan B if something were to happen. But there's nothing in here that I would think is an emergency. It's just a backup plan.
If the weather cooperates, we can probably make it through the year.
Of course, that would be helpful.
Just a
John?
further
Yeah.
comment on that, that was just for, I think, what I would think of as a transfer switch. It wasn't to actually buy a generator, right?
I believe it was
I read
transfer
that
switch to
correctly.
be able to allow a
To be
generator
able to
to
plug in a
power up
generator, yeah.
a number of items which are then added to this.
Yep.
Um,
It was a
so
change
The
control,
generator
right,
would
to
come
add
later
the
if needed.
transfer switch?
Right, right.
Okay.
It's just a matter of having the hookup for the items that needed to go on to the generator.
I got a question about item 13, if you can field it.
Well, no. Go ahead. Probably
So I
not.
was curious, they were paying bills in section 13, and there was a motion to pay for some fuel for generators for temporary air conditioning. And I was just curious, is that because the project fell behind, or was that always part of the plan to have some temporary air conditioning, or?
I can't, Linda D now?
This was at Baldwin, sorry, to be more clear. Have air conditioning in the building while they were doing the work, otherwise there would be no air conditioning at the start of school.
Right.
It was so that they would have air conditioning. And I believe it was part of the project, but I will double check with Vernon.
And that was work done over, was it done over this summer? It was, right?
The first part of the Baldwin project started over the summer.
Right.
This year, will continue into next year.
I would imagine it would be to keep air conditioning in some of the areas that really needed to continue to be air conditioned. Like if you have a data room, or as you
Okay.
know, being in IT,
I guess I was just
Certain
wondering, if
areas
it's part of the
probably
plan,
need to
or
keep-
we fell behind, so we wanted to air condition the building because it was.
yeah, the project
wasn't
didn't
ready
fall
yet.
behind, but I don't know if it was planned for in the first place. So
All
that's
right. I
something
mean, not a
we-
huge big deal. I was just kind of curious, though.
No, it's a good question. Linda, you'll get to Cliff. Thanks. Anything else on standing building? Okay,
Yeah, well, there was one
Nope.
point
you had one more?
to get an update on item 11. Get an
Uh,
update on this project to relocate the BOE offices on New England Road.
Right, that is, the design
I
team.
think we're still a couple
the-
of months away from,
Yeah, yeah. The
Estimates.
design team is working on that, on the layout of that. Yeah, I'd expect it'll probably be in November or December, that plan will go forward
Mhm.
to the building committee for review. Okay?
okay
Item-
with me.
Item number 4, review and accept a report of expenditures for the Board of Education for September 2018. Linda and Amy. Good evening. Everyone's got a copy of the tuition enrollment reports that Linda provided?
So we'll start with the
Okay.
financials.
Sure.
For the month of September, the expenditures were $4,831,442.40, which puts us at 21.2% of the budget. Last year, we were fairly similar at 20.38%. We did have some revenue in September, which was for Medicaid reimbursement. And a lot of the stuff that was either up or down is related to the timing of bills. The technology lease will pay back the equipment that was in capital that was higher than the year prior, so that hasn't happened yet. Some of the employee benefits were reimbursements for retirees, and some ending salary for our associate superintendent. And the warrant for all the payments was about just over $2 million. Specific questions, happy to answer.
You had passed out an enrollment report.
Yeah.
And could you just review that very quickly in terms of the October 1st date is the date that the Board of Ed is supposed to
For
report?
the state, right. So we have that report, you guys have it in front of you.
Yes.
We are down 54 students from last year. And would note that that's not in any given spot, it's sort of generally across the district, so it doesn't indicate any need to change classroom sizes or teaching staff. We did, I know we've talked about it
or many of us have talked about it over the years. We did have that enrollment study that was done, and we kind of refer back to it from time to time. But it shows us the green line.
They
Were we-
they don't have the full
Oh, so-
packet, they just have
Yeah.
the,
Here we go.
Yeah,
So
I was just
the-
gonna ask what the number was.
So the
projected.
actual is the green line, and the red line is what the predictive study had thought we were gonna be at, so.
the study
Hold that
thought
for
we
the
would be,
camera, maybe?
the study thought we would be at 2,889
Very
students
small.
instead
So
of
there-
3,236.
And we've known this for a couple of years. We've
Yeah.
had a drop, but it hasn't been as substantial as
Right.
initially expected. or
Yeah,
like
it sort
some
of
our
leveled
neighbors.
off after that initial drop in 14, 15.
I have a question about the pre-K.
Mm-hmm.
We hired an additional teacher for pre-K.
Was it
this
pre-K?
year.
It was kindergarten, right?
Pre-K is the program at Guilford Lakes only.
I
It's
know.
Kindergarten. Kindergarten, we added, there was
Oh,
one.
we added in kindergarten.
added
So
There was one
Kindergarten-
added at Lakes.
Kindergarten teacher, yes.
how many
Not-
teachers do we have in pre-K?
In pre-K? I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4 in the pre-K program.
Which is solely at Lakes.
Solely at Lakes.
Solely at Lakes,
right.
correct.
Grades, ages 3 and 4. And it's special needs students and regular ed students in that program.
What's the projection in there? Did we go up this year?
No, it's been
About the same.
steady.
There's no up, it's just the same amount of slots every year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a lottery, right?
Well, we have a
Yeah, it's
limited
a
number of
lottery.
It's
slots.
a lottery.
It's-
And that's
yeah, it's
morning
hard.
and afternoon
It's a
sessions,
lottery,
correct?
yeah. It's
Right.
hard to get into.
So it's not the same students throughout
Maybe they
the,
reject
It can be. There are some that go
I
full
don't
day,
know.
and there's some that go either AM or PM.
Just to go to your question on kindergarten, we were reading, there were minutes from last month, and there was an added teacher right at Lakes.
Right.
A fourth teacher added for kindergarten.
Yes.
This is reflecting Lakes at 57,
You know,
and it was 60 in the meeting. So did that change from month to month? And do we have 4 teachers for 57? Or, I know when you bring a teacher on and you do the class, now if there's a drop, you can't redistribute the class and say, oh, by the way, we were only kidding, we're gonna go back to 3, right? So that decision for 4 teachers was made before we knew the October 1st enrollment of 57.
Right.
Right.
I want to make sure that was clear, because this shows 57, which would be 18 per class, right?
Right.
But we know that
it's not going to be.
there's 4,
something like that.
but that was based on what happened at the start of school.
Right, to
in
get the kids,
projection.
yeah.
Okay,
So we do have 4.
We do have.
we do have 4.
A question. Megan mentioned this lottery that is used to at least qualify the pre-K kids. How many applicants have we had for pre-K?
I'm not sure what
Don't
the
honestly
total,
know, yeah.
I'm not sure what the total number of
I
applicants
mean,
are.
the thought is
I
that
know there was a
we've
waiting
rejected
list.
for reasons of space and teaching support, we've rejected a number of kids. I'd like to know that number, who
I can
cannot
get you the
have,
number.
cannot be eligible for our pre-K program in this town.
Well, the lottery is only for the typical peers, so that's only for the regular ed students, and we have to take the special ed students.
Yes,
So it's,
So
the
whatever
lottery
slots
is,
are remaining
meaning
from what
the-
you have for special education students in pre-K is what?
That sounds
And it's
to
33?
make most sense.
33 slots?
33. Well, that's what, yeah.
Well, this year. but
Yeah.
It was like that last year, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
it's fully subscribed. Yeah.
And the regular ed students pay tuition.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you about the medical line.
Yes.
It looked like it was just up from last year percentage-wise, but even a small percentage is pretty big, right, with medical. Do we know what's behind it?
I'm not concerned about that one. It's,
Okay.
looks like more of the timing of the reimbursements from the employees for their medical. When I compared those, that was down a little bit, but that will catch up by the end of the year. Sometimes it's the timing of when we get those payments and the timing of when we pay the HSA payments.
Okay.
So I'm right now not worried about that
All
line.
right, it's early in the game.
It's early in the game for that one.
See, anything on either the, were you going to go to, still on the
No,
report? Yeah, go ahead.
on the spreadsheet.
Sure, go ahead.
You go on the spreadsheets?
Still on the spreadsheet.
All right, and I tried to decipher the legal services, which are at 33%, and it said contract negotiations. Which
Labor
contracts?
Custodians,
Custodians,
teachers.
teachers, and administrators, but we didn't
Didn't use legal.
use legal for the negotiations, but we are using legal to draft the contract.
Documentation. So custodians,
And
administrators,
teachers.
teachers. Is that it?
That's it for right now.
All being done in this year.
Yes.
So we will exceed the budget. No?
No, because the negotiations are done. We have, the custodian's contract is done, the board and the custodians ratified that. The teachers, there is a tentative agreement on that one, so that should be wrapping up, and the administrators was done without any legal, it's just the legal to draft the contract. So the negotiations piece for the year is pretty much done. I think we start one in the spring with dining services.
So, yeah.
I think dining services comes up, and that may start at the end of this year, if not the beginning of next.
And are they on target with building and grounds? They've spent most of the budget already.
They haven't spent it, it's all
Encumbered.
encumbered.
Yeah.
Did
Which was the same as
thing-
last
yeah,
year.
Same thing
Yeah.
last year, he encumbers
They
for,
front-load it, yeah.
for all the things that could possibly happen, and the testing that we do need to do, and the supplies we need to buy. We already have encumbrances in for snow removal, even though I'm hoping snow's a long way off yet this year. So, I mean, it's just his planning process. And then we adjust it as we go through the year and we need to.
Tuition on this report is running behind last year, but have there been any changes in our tuition status that would?
There was,
Make that
from the
change.
report that I gave you last month to the report that I handed out today, there was a settlement that was done, which was not reflected in the last report. Right now, we are still 57,000 under budget. I'm hoping that that's going to go higher. We're waiting on the final cost, and right now I think I'm just being very conservative and have it in there a lot higher than what it's going to be. So that should, I'm hoping that that's going to hold. But that was the only change from last month, was a settlement.
Great.
Can you talk about the line item for security? There's a big discrepancy, 77.12%, and then the prior year was 18. I think it's an 8 or a 16.
Yeah, so there's a purchase this year for a security that will do, it's being tested at the high school for visitors to come in, and I believe it scans your license and prints you a badge, but it does some kind of a check on your, when you come in, and then it keeps track so that when you come in the next time, you know, it already has whatever done. So it's a security system that we're purchasing for the high school and trying out the software. And then if it seems to be successful and works well, then we'll roll it out to the other schools.
Instructional equipment, that's a high number.
Is that the technology
That's
line?
technology.
Yeah.
It's all technology.
Yes,
Yeah, that's-
that's the technology lease.
Prepaid, and then we get reimbursed on the
Yes.
lease.
Correct.
Does that explain the whole?
Well, the other piece of that is the payments to the leasing company. And we've been doing more and more of the leases where we pay up front as opposed to paying at the end of the year. So that number is a little bit higher. Because I think last year we paid off the last one in arrears. So now they're all paying up front. So it's the payments to the 5 leasing companies.
Okay, so it's all up front too, so that's
All
why
up
it's
front.
over 100%?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it'll come down once we get the reimbursement from the company. We're just waiting for we have to show proof of payment and that the checks have cleared. And so we're waiting for a couple checks to clear, and then we're going to submit for reimbursement. And hopefully we should have that back.
Okay.
And then
And that'll
hopefully
bring
next
it
month.
back in line with?
Yes.
Close to 100 or whatever. I was curious about site improvement. And then I suppose that's just timing. Got some of the site improvement projects done already? Okay.
Yes.
We can move
A
on
number
to,
of projects that were done over the summer, between the Adams parking lots at Leet.
Leet?
So there was a lot of projects that were done over the summer, so
Oh,
just
yeah, makes
timing.
sense, right?
Just timing of those.
Absolutely. Do the work in the summer.
yeah,
That was part of it.
that was part, there were a lot of there was also a lot of carpet
A lot of carpet
replacements
and
that I saw in
flooring.
the warrants.
Ceiling,
The
lights.
ceiling, yeah, there was
Yep.
the basement level of Adams, they replaced the ceiling, but they added in additional lighting to make it brighter. So they kept the LED lights that were put in through the energy performance contract, but they added more lights and then replaced all the ceiling tiles and replaced the framing for the ceiling tiles. So that was the first level that done at Adams, and the other two other levels we done later on, when funds are available.
And all these carpeting invoices that I see on page 13, that's all scheduled replacement?
Yes. There was a
How many
schedule.
years do we get out of that?
I don't know.
The average,
It depends on the material,
I tend to remember the average is 7 to 9,
I know.
I think
put-
on that,
I know there's a
the
schedule
replacement
of
schedule on it.
when it's,
Yeah.
usually carpeting is one of the first things that gets cut when we're short of funds.
Seven is the number, but it usually ends up being 10 to 12.
Right.
It's mostly Baldwin.
A lot of carpet.
Yeah, it's probably the one slated.
Guess I might as well ask you about supplies too, just overall supplies being, running at a higher percentage than last year too, about 7% higher or so.
Yeah,
You think that's gonna even out, or?
that'll even out.
A lot of it's encumbered,
I
too.
mean, sometimes you
Yeah,
can't
a
tell
lot.
what's driving it, but
Yeah, a lot of it's encumbered. What we've asked the schools to do is to try and plan what they need to purchase for really like the first semester of school and order that for the start of school. And then come December, around that time frame, order what they need for the rest of the schools. And it's been a concept that it's been a little hard to get going, but they seem to have gotten it now where they know what they're ordering for the first half, and then they'll order for the second half later on.
just very front-end loaded, even more so this year than last year.
A little bit more,
Okay.
a little bit more. I think last year was still there were a lot of orders placed right after school started, because they wasn't quite done where they should have been placing all the orders ahead of time.
Okay.
It'll even out.
And who's typically in charge of the ordering? Is it the principals who make it, or they get input from the faculty?
They get input from the faculty. Usually in an elementary school, the teachers give their suggestions to the principal. They fill out, this is what we want to buy. The principal goes through and says yes or no. And then it comes on to the superintendent or assistant superintendent for approval, and then it comes to me. At the high school, it goes through the department chair, from the teacher to the department chair to the principal. And they make the decisions before it comes to me. And then we place the orders.
Thanks.
Another question on the warrant. On page 11, what is Newsbank?
It's
Apparently a service, or what's,
it's a
high school service, what?
It's a subscription service for in the library of all the different news, magazines, articles. It's a online subscription service to different publications.
I have a on page 15, $6,500 for mold remediation at Adams.
Yes. There was mold in room, I forgot which room. And it was due to an air conditioning issue. So the room wasn't properly being ventilated. They were shutting it off. And when the blinds were down and the room shut off, it was growing mold. So they had to go in and remove the mold.
Since you put it in the packet, I might as well ask, was there a decision made yet on the transportation appeal?
I'm not
For the bus
aware
stop?
of. I'm not.
Which,
I think
There were two.
there were two.
And one of them was decided in the minutes. One of the minutes, there was a
the
decision.
two, they've both been decided,
They
both
were-
of them, yeah.
they were both.
One went further got all the way to the board, and the other one was decided in the committee.
What are we doing? Are we making more stops or not making more stops?
I'm not aware of what the decision was.
According to the minutes, I think they were both denied.
I know, yeah, I don't,
Uh,
I know one of them was denied, I don't know
Yeah.
the other.
One
I
of
didn't
them
see
was.
it. I didn't see that. I just want to go back to the previous question about Adams. And what type of space was that? Was it a admin space, classroom space? Do you know? Regardless, it's clean, that's the point.
It's clean, I believe
It's it's remediated and,
B5, I'm not sure whether that's a classroom space, and no, I'm not calling bingo.
okay.
Yeah,
Just in
I'm
case
not
there's
sure.
any concern, just, it's clean.
It's
whatever it
clean,
is.
it's clean, and there's
Okay.
no issues for the students in that room, if there's, or teachers, if there
If
are
there,
any in
if
there.
there are any. Actually, the very first item on the warrants, the Baldwin retaining wall.
Mhm.
I was wondering on that, was that something that was planned? Or was that unplanned at that retaining wall? I didn't have a chance to look at what the budget said on projects. I was just wondering if that $24,000
I'm not
was,
sure. I don't remember.
was a planned expenditure or something that was kind of an emergency repair?
Do not know.
I think it was planned, but I'll double check.
Okay. If it was, great. If it wasn't, it's 24,000 less out of the capital.
We did get an update, we were talking about buses, and I wasn't trying to be vague about the transportation decisions, it's just, we don't really wanna, there's details that we don't really wanna get into. They're all done, with
Right.
minutes, but,
Right, there were
You know,
appeals and there were decisions. but
correct.
That's not our purview, that's yours.
correct.
Right.
I was surprised it was in our packet. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
I was surprised too, but,
Yeah.
it happened and we decided.
And once it gets in there, it's fair game.
Okay.
Yeah, true. We did have, an update from the bus company
Uh-huh.
last week. They came to our operations committee and have all good things to report.
Yeah, the start of the season, the school year seemed to go very well.
Significantly better than the start of last year.
For a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
Last year was a lot going on.
Rough, yeah.
I had one more question on page
Warrant, yeah.
15 on the warrants. $50,000 to the Southport School as a tuition balance. What is that? Is that more students than we thought, or?
It's tuition for an outplacement.
It's a fresh tuition? It's a new tuition?
I don't know if it's a new one.
It said tuition balance.
Yeah, the way they bill, you pay it up front. So we had paid a deposit and the first installment in July, and then this was the balance of the tuition. So it's one student, and that's only a portion of the tuition, but that's the final payment of the 3.
One small question. Wasn't there talk of moving the Upper Cox Field to the town and away from the Board
Yes,
of
It
Ed?
has been moved.
It has, because I saw a bill that you guys
Yes.
paid for the water bill for
It
the
was,
summer.
we
Yes.
just discussed it because it came up, wondering why the water bill didn't go along with the field.
I was so,
And it was, yeah, it's under discussion.
okay, okay. So it has been, it is,
The field-
it is or was moved,
It
and the
is.
water bill perhaps should have been paid by the town and not paid.
Right, well,
Okay.
the discussion last I knew was, we had it budgeted, the town hasn't budgeted for it yet. They're supposed to be budgeting for it in the near budget, and maybe we'll take it over in July. But that was the last of the conversation that I had.
But the field was turned over before the end of the school year.
Right, but the budget was already completed.
Gotcha.
And it's a fairly substantial amount to not be, to have to pay when it wasn't budgeted.
Agreed.
Anything else for Amy and Linda?
Just the HVAC repairs at the various schools, are those, sometimes they show up as emergency, some are non-emergency. Any distinction between those?
The only reason they showed up as emergency last year is because when the purchase order was done, that's what they had put the description in as.
And so it took all of them.
So it always defaulted in as emergency repairs.
Mhm.
We took that out, and now it just all says HVAC repairs for whatever school.
So some could be more urgent than others?
Some could be more urgent than others.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Amy, Linda, thank you. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of September 2019 in the amount of $4,831,442.40. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Thank you. Item number 5, review and approve report of expenditures for town government for September 2019. Mary Jane.
Evening.
Hello there.
Assuming revenues first?
Certainly.
Okay.
Our revenues are pretty much on track for the year. It appears to be a little bit further along than last year, but our revenues are really driven by tax collection, and if you remember a year ago, we weren't quite up to having all of our revenue from the tax collection posted because of being shorthanded in that office. So as an example, in fiscal 17, we were at 51.8%. So last year is really the anomaly as opposed to this year. You'll see that otherwise, majority of the budgets are all about where they should be this year. So unless you have any specific questions, I don't have anything significant to report.
Just noticed that fire and youth and family services were trending a little bit lower.
I talked to the fire department, and their Medicare reimbursements were behind. They actually came in the first week of October, so September's were
Right.
low.
Can you explain this enormous discrepancy on finance between this year and last year?
That's all budget. That's
It's
all what we
budget.
budgeted last year. We
Okay.
accommodated for that in the budget this year. So we're still actually trending higher on that line item.
Oh,
But-
we're right where
but-
we should be. Yeah, we're right on track where
Yeah.
we should
Okay.
be. If we continue
Yeah,
to
that's right,
trend-
because it peaks, right? It peaks and then it'll come down, right?
It
So that's
peaks
a quarter,
in-
we've done a quarter, and it's
Right.
basically right on track.
Yeah,
Quarter.
yeah,
Makes
it's a good
sense.
Right, I did some work on that, and, we only need $63,000 to be 50% of that budget by the end of the year. We should easily be able to do that, so we're trending right where we should be. Our two biggest months are actually August and February,
Mhm.
so.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else on revenues? Actually,
Only
because,
like a comment that
Go
the
ahead.
tax collection for prior year taxes was really good. I mean,
Mhm.
the delinquent taxes.
Absolutely, we're always working on that, and in addition, we bring in, a few $1,000s even in suspense every year, so the tax collector is constantly trying to, bring in those taxes, and, this year we've done pretty well so far already.
Bit of a loaded question. I noticed, I noticed that golf was up a little bit.
So
Is that, so two questions on that. One, is it because of a better estimate on the budget this year, so we didn't expect as much, therefore we're trending a little bit higher because we didn't budget as much? And what's the status of meeting with the golf committee? I don't know if this is the time to bring it up. I figure good time as any.
It's good then. The answer is yes, there, to the first question.
Okay.
Also, I think in September, we had a one-time revenue hit from a tournament that they ran
Okay.
at the golf course. It's one of the initiatives from the recently founded golf course committee, which is comprised of Ryan McGlone, Rick Maynard, Chris Hodgson, and Brittany Burles from the golf commission members. That's one of the initiatives. Brian has, we did not meet in August or early September owing to calendar problems, but Brian has a meeting slated for next week with the board. So,
But the meetings are happening and there's. Yeah,
They are.
Okay. And it trended a little higher than last year, so.
and
Okay.
one thing, at this point, Mike Papp, the professional, his contract has expired, and the commission at this point does not intend to hire him again or fill that position next year.
And also on the golf course, we had additional $1,000 that came in September that was deposited the 1st of October, so that revenue was actually even higher
Okay.
than presented. The golf course netted over $3,000 on the golf tournament.
Good. That's good. Good news. Okay. Anything else on revenues? Expenditures?
Similar story on the expenditure side, right where we should be at this point. Again, I don't have any specific issues to bring to your attention unless you have some questions.
Anyone?
I had a question on,
Yep.
I guess my question is, how does it work? We had, the police department seized some asset forfeitures. So, for $23,775 went out to the clerk of Superior Court
You're on warrants?
on a warrant. So how does that work?
Yeah, I saw the same thing.
The money is held in a separate account when we seize any type of property. We have to hold it separately. So it's really a balance sheet item. It's not addressed within the budget. So it's money that we've brought in.
We brought it in. This is the money going out.
Correct.
When did it come, when did we see it come in?
Exactly when, I'm not sure.
So we should have seen it somewhere in
It would.
in where?
Wouldn't it come in over a period of time?
It does, but it's held.
No, that's probably one thing.
Right, it could be. I don't know exactly what.
So that
what
would
it
have been in the
represents.
revenue, we would have had to have looked through the revenue page and seen it in there sometime in the past? Where would that
It
have
would-
been?
It would have been an off-fund revenue, however. We hold that in a separate fund and pull it over. The way the forfeiture laws work, we have to hold that separately. So I don't have a.
So is this one item, or could this be a multitude of items?
It could be either. I don't know exactly what it represents.
That's how I took it, was, over a period of time, there's money seized because of
Correct.
whatever, is going on, and then it gets put into this amount.
I can look into that.
Yeah, because I've seen this before, but it hasn't, it's not recent, and,
The
yeah,
description
I caught the
leads-
same thing, so.
The description leads you to believe that this is just one specific case, so it's probably one item in this particular case.
In case number, and there's one case number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it got me to thinking about how do we account for this?
Right, because you're looking at the special funds?
Special, weekly warrants greater than 1,000.
Oh, yes.
Right, so all that money is a separate fund. You wouldn't see that in the revenue for the police department. It would be off and separately held in the fund. So you would not have seen that, I guess, is the answer in the regular revenues that we present.
I have a question. We retired a little more principal than we thought we would. Is there any reason for that?
For debt?
Yeah.
That's because the difference is the amount of premiums that we haven't brought forward yet. So we budget, let's go back to, let me go back to that so I can.
Okay. I thought we just maybe paid a little extra, maybe interest was lower or something.
No, so when we budget each year for the debt, the principal and the interest, we assume use of some of our premiums that we collect when we sell our bonds. So that difference we bring in at the end of the year as a transfer, or whenever we're done with paying all the bills for our debt. And so we have that money held because we've brought that money in through our bond sale. Okay. And instead of budgeting the full amount of the principal, we budget net the amount that we're going to use of the premiums. So
okay.
Each year we have that.
So you already knew those premiums.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because we budget the prior year's premiums, or what we
Gotcha.
have left from the prior year.
All right.
And that will disappear near the end of the year?
Correct. We could actually do that at any time.
That overage, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's budgeted that way.
Okay.
I see $7,000 for Route 77 pedestrian improvements. Is that not something the state pays for? What are we doing on Route 77?
There's a local match that we'll be required to
So
participate in.
the bill is more than that. This is our
Right.
portion of what we have to pay. Okay.
This is all Leon Engineering at this point.
Okay, so seeing that we're in warrants, we could stay in warrants.
Special fund.
Sorry.
Special fund.
Special fund warrants, sure.
That's where I am.
Sure, Ken, go ahead.
That's where I happen to be.
The first two items, the big items in special funds, could you just let us know where we are on these payments? It would seem to me that the refuse truck should have been all paid off in that item.
They were in the process during last year, so that was money carried over by prior year encumbrances. We had a purchase order out, so the project is done for the refuse truck.
That's
It just
done.
the payment was done, and the delivery of the truck came in after
What
the
about
first of the
the
year.
HVAC at Baldwin?
That I'd have to look at the
Well, that was-
capital reports that I sent to see where
Yeah.
that stands.
That was bonded and then it was finished
Yeah, I
over
know it
the
was
summer,
bonded.
so,
Right.
well, and then it was finished over the
Yeah,
summer.
so
So
I-
this
It was
finished as
this
well.
carried over as a
I-
payment to this year.
I can't speak to whether it's finished or not. I have to look at the other reports that I provide. I'm not as up on the school projects as I am at the town projects, so. But it would be reported on the capital reports that I
Right,
provided.
so we can look at that.
Yeah.
Those capital, segueing into the capital reports, those are updated, I guess I could go to it and see.
They're through
Those are
September.
updated as of the end of September?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Anything else on warrants?
Unless Linda knows if that's done.
I had a quick question on the weekly warrant. Hold on, I'm sorry. Where'd it go? What is the third one down? It just got lost. 51,000 undistributed receipts, Guilford Center 4.
That's a pass-through for the Guilford Center for Children's grant. We're the pass-through agent for that.
Okay.
So the money comes into us, and we pass that straight through to them.
Okay.
That grant is actually being audited through our audit this year.
So we'll see that.
Well, you won't necessarily see it, but they are paying special. It is one of the grants that were chosen. Every year they choose a certain amount of grants through the state and federal audit, and that one happens to be chosen this year.
Okay. All right, so we'll open it up to capital fund. Now, there's going to be some discussion later about closure.
It's nothing to do with these,
So,
has nothing to do
I
with these
understand
funds
that.
that I have here.
Totally understand that. So, there are a couple here, and I always look to the older funds. So, for example, the very first one on the school classroom and space renovation, there's only about $16,000 left. What will trigger that to be added to a closed?
You will see them next year. I've already been in contact with Cliff Gurnham on all of these projects. We're closing out Fund 214 this year, and then we'll be working on closing projects out on a regular basis.
Okay.
Completion of the main project
Right.
would trigger.
Yeah, I didn't know if
Would
there was a
trigger.
time test, a time to it that is, well, keep it open for 8 years, 7 years, or if it's the amount. And it's
You know, we don't
probably
want,
a little
we
bit
really
of both,
don't
but more
want to
the.
leave them, we don't
but-
want to leave them open.
Right, if you can help it, right.
Correct.
And
You
there
know,
were,
I'm looking 3 years maybe,
Yeah.
depending on, 3 to 5 years at the tops, depending on, the status of the project.
right,
Mainly because we bond for the funds, while we're paying for the project. So it's not like we bring the bond fund money in,
right.
and then, 3 years from now, we start the project.
Mhm.
Doesn't, so, we wait until the project is underway, and each year we cover those costs or close to, or what we anticipate we're using. So it's really a simultaneous project, the revenue and the expenses. So once that project is complete, we should be closing these bond authorizations out, and not trying to use the money up just on other things.
Mhm.
So I'll be looking to close them out on a regular basis moving
Okay.
forward.
And we'll talk about the ones that are gonna get closed.
Correct, I'm starting
later on.
with those old ones.
Yeah.
To get those done, and then we'll be
Right.
moving forward with both on the town and the school side, closing them out.
Good.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Go ahead.
There's an additional reason other than appropriate bookkeeping and the timeliness of doing this is once an authorization gets ages to a certain time, you can no longer use the tax-free muni status. They have to be taxable bonds. And what's the lifetime on that? Is it?
Well, 18 months to 3 years, depending. Any money you use, if you spend the money, you have to bond within a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
So we could use the money that's left over and still bond it, but because we had spent that money significantly, past its
Past the
life,
time.
we had to do taxable bonds, so.
Got it, okay.
We
I didn't realize.
we don't want to necessarily do that in the future.
And I applaud Mary Jane's efforts. This is a systemic cleaning up of some processes over a long period of time that were, I don't want to say neglected, but these kind of things wasn't enough attention paid to. And Mary Jane has been focusing on this since she came on board.
Good.
2 years ago? 2.5 years ago?
3 years
Three,
next week.
Feels like yesterday.
Just like longer some days.
Congratulations on your 3 years.
Thank you.
So on the capital projects, there's two of them here. If anybody has any questions. I did have one question on the capital projects, Fund 217. Kind of more of a curiosity that on the second page, emergency services, all those line items there, I got a little confused, there is a line, make sure I get the right one here. So there's a line for wood chipper 18-inch capacity, and it goes across, and there's a revenue as of 9/30 for $660,000. And then a fund balance of 606. It just seems odd how that number is in there.
I think
And-
it was,
And then there's a
I think
number
it
of
just needs to
revenue.
be, it's just not broken out between, if you can see all that in blue
Yeah.
is one line item.
Yes,
So I think the way that this was posted was just a one-time, one number on that, so it really should probably be spread out between all of those, but as you can see.
So it's kind of a
um,
placeholder, general placeholder, but it should have been allocated
Right,
to
'cause
the,
in Munis, we
Yeah.
have one line number, one line
Right.
item, you know what I mean? And on here, it was broken out for this, for some reason, just between, I think just to keep track of each individual item, but Munis probably just had the plain 660, so it was just posted
Okay.
into one of the line
it
items.
just seemed odd to
but-
have that under, a revenue item under wood chipper, and so.
Yeah,
I just,
I think it's just how it was placed, but it's really an accumulation of all of those account numbers, or all of those line items within that one account.
is that something that'll get broken up later as we,
I can
or,
break it up, yeah, this is really for our purposes, it can certainly be broken up.
that was the only question I
Yeah,
had,
no problem.
just that one. Anybody else have anything on capital, projects, funds, capital fund? Medical benefits account, that was, now that's a catch-up, right? From
Right,
last
September
month.
is mainly a catch-up of the low amount in August. We're still trending low, lower than our anticipated, and we typically are at this point. Right now, all of our employees are using their own HSA money. Once those funds run out, then the town will start to pick up those. So that's why we tend to see, some of the larger months in the second half of the year.
Right. Okay, anything else on medical?
Is that ISL box just a little off this? There's no coverage yet, right?
Correct. We start to accumulate claims once they hit 75,000. That's what the 191,972. So that's an accumulation of actually 2 claims. Neither of them have hit the $150,000 mark. So we have no claims, no ISL claims over that $150,000 mark. So we haven't
Okay.
touched our coverage yet.
Should that covered by ISL amount be 0 then? Or is that a carryover from last year?
Is he,
No, once we start plugging numbers into that, the savings, right now, there's really no savings, so, it'll start to change, it probably should be
Okay.
minus,
Is
a
the
minus number.
1.7 million or so, is that?
That's our
not the-
premium.
Oh, that's
That's
the
what we
premium.
pay.
Okay, that's what confused me. I'm sorry. Now I understand. Sorry about that.
okay,
Thought I knew this one by now.
And I did add at the bottom, between the board and the town, we did pay about $325,000 in HSA, into our employees' HSA accounts, which is not paid through the medical fund, it's paid through the regular budgets, both by the town and the Board of Ed.
Okay.
But that is indeed an expense of the medical,
okay.
so I have that at the bottom.
Are those contributions uniform throughout the year, or do they vary between the agreements with the bargaining units they have?
They're twice a year. It only is a difference between whether you're single or family, otherwise it's the same for everyone. Or if you come in part of the year, I think the Board of Ed has a similar thing, all their bargaining units have the same, twice a year, right?
No, there is one, I believe, that is split into 3 payments.
Oh, one is 3, okay. Board of Ed has 1 and 3, otherwise everybody else is 2.
Going back to John's quick
Okay.
question quickly, is the ISL premium this 1.7 million? Is that the
Yes.
premium?
Mhm.
Okay, so really it
Oh,
should...
it is not lined
So
up.
Yeah.
No, that's
So
what it's-
ISL premium, those words should be up at the top there.
Right, it's-
Covered by should be 0, and the savings are really, it's really a negative
It's
number.
that's what I said, it should be a negative, right.
Right, so you,
Yeah.
okay.
It's on the wrong.
All right.
So it's labeled...
That's what was
it
throwing
is-
me off.
It is
I got it.
labeled...
That's what I say, it should
it's
be a
labeled-
negative.
It's labeled
Should be a
incorrectly, and it
negative,
should be a
yeah.
negative, right.
It should be down 1, planted in the wrong line.
Okay. Anything else on medical? Or anything else for that matter, for Mary Jane?
Just going back to the warrants, there was one, it says redress fire to police vehicle. And I wasn't sure if that was a transfer of a vehicle in the fire.
Where is that? Did you
It's,
see that in the regular warrant?
In the regular warrants, let me just get to it. on page,
Sounds like they just
it was on,
moved the vehicle from.
on page
fire
12, at the bottom of page 12.
Yeah, it looks like they transferred the fire to the, a piece of equipment from the fire department to the police, so they had to remark it.
I wasn't sure if there was a fire in a police vehicle. Just when I was reading it, so.
So the ISL premium went up by over 30% this year, huh?
It did.
Almost 35%. Wow. Holy mackerel. It's a
You
lot.
worried about it?
Yeah, it's a
It
lot.
usually,
It's-
it usually
it's a
works
lot.
to our favor though, right?
I don't know, that's a lot.
Historically.
That's a big number.
Usually works to
Yeah,
our favor.
but when it gets bigger, then you
That's
start
a big-
wondering, right?
That's a big number, yeah.
No
I was
change
wrong
in
last
the
year. I
amount?
thought it was high last
Seven-
year. I was wrong. I don't know.
75 and
It's-
above is covered, same as last year?
Anything over 150.
150.
Oh, over 150? But same as last year, is what I meant.
Right, that didn't
Same
change.
as-
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the limit, yeah,
Right,
the
the limits have
thresholds.
not
yeah.
changed.
I have one question I forgot to ask earlier on the warrants. On page 6, buried, not buried, that implies something, but lost, let's say, lost between all the property tax refunds, in the middle of page 6 is an item for $220,000 for Freightliners.
That's a Public Works vehicle that the purchase order was carried over to the new year. So that it was ordered last year, but wasn't delivered till this year. So it's on a balance sheet item, which is what these are. So it was a vehicle that was in our capital plan, and it just carried over to the next year. Straddled the 2 years.
It was encumbered and then paid for it.
And then paid for in the new year.
It's listed right under the $16.75 property tax refund.
It's alphabetical. Franklin, Freightliner, Gilbert. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yes.
Follow up on the ISL. Last year, and Ken, this year you might be absolutely right. Last year's ISL coverage was over 1.6 million. So insurance companies are pricing accordingly, apparently, as we continue to go up, but we've met that.
So
That's what our actual were last year
That's what the actual was.
for 2008.
And the premium was
1.328. So
Yeah.
Would say 300,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, that's what it was last year, so.
the,
Yeah.
the company get it back.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe now, maybe later.
It's true. They get their money back eventually, don't they? Yeah.
ISL is a bit of a gamble.
It is,
Yeah,
and
but-
and we argue with them every year over it when we have our meetings, so.
And it's usually worked out for us, so.
Linda's in all of those, we really hammer all of those numbers, and then we until we finally agree. Linda and I make sure we agree on all the numbers before we move forward with our budgets.
It also
So-
offers a little bit of kind of catastrophic, though, protection, right, in case you really did have a terrible,
Oh, absolutely.
really big year with big claims, and
Absolutely.
can protect the town that
And
way.
these days, unfortunately, it doesn't take much for that.
Anything else for town? Okay, you're not going anywhere, right?
No.
Okay. I will.
Go.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of September 2019 in the amount of $7,007,115.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Item number 6, consider and take possible action on resolution to close out capital projects. We were just talking about this. So we have a resolution in front of us to close out the capital projects. Mary Jane, do you want to give us a little brief on this? Or it's fairly self-explanatory where there's authorized appropriations and bond authorizations for these capital improvements that they've either been completed or there's been no additional appropriations or bonding necessary, so.
Right, so all of these projects are done.
Right.
Complete.
Right.
And you'll see the second page after the resolution is taken right from our official statement that shows the amount of authorized but unissued on each of these. So these projects represent our Fund 214 as we look at 216 and 217. So from the accounting standpoint, we look at these projects as a whole. So similarly, how you saw that 660,000 attributed to one line, and it was really others. It could be others. Here, for instance, if you look at the Cox Adams School improvements, it shows a $2.6 million authorization. And we have $1.1 million left unissued. When we go on to the next part of what we're doing in the transfer, you'll see that we actually spent almost all the money on that project, but the bond authorizations on how they came in, some were higher, some were lower than needed, and we're only needing to authorize and deauthorize the group as a whole. If we were to bond for all of these projects, we'd have more money than is needed. So what's left may look odd line by line, but cumulative, that's what we're doing. We're deauthorizing them in a cumulative fashion. So I don't want you to say, well, there's a $2.6 million project and we didn't finish it because it's only 1.6, because you can see it was all spent in the next motion you have to make.
Right. So this is including 7 projects. And the total amount that's being deauthorized is $2,874,963.
Correct.
So does anybody have any questions? So what this does, what's remaining for capital bonding or capital funds is about $20.7 million. This is deauthorizing and taking away from that $23,557,000.
Correct.
Right.
What you're doing is we're no longer able to use any of these funds. The projects are complete. Between this motion and your next motion, Fund 214 will balance out to 0 and we'll be done. It will.
So I understand that's an amount we never bonded for because we didn't
Correct.
actually need the funds.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's not
Finished all the
necessarily
projects.
the amount in each of these line items, because we
Okay.
might have over bonded in one, anticipating, and then it came in less, so we don't need to bond for the next project because we brought the money in from a different project. So we don't look at them line by line, we look at them as a whole.
Okay, understood.
And the whole being Fund 214.
Fund 214, correct.
I think it's, some of these projects go back, the school facilities improvements project, 2005, 2006. So
it's ridiculous.
it's not like these were things that just happened recently. They're going back a long,
Absolutely,
long
and in
time.
In fact, the most recent one is 2011.
Right.
So it's 2005 to 2011, so it's 8 to 14 years ago.
Right. And keeping the authorization there is just
This is something-
tempting to use the funds, but they really shouldn't.
Yeah.
Shouldn't use them.
I'm very happy that we're doing this. This has been something that I talked about when I was on the Board of Selectmen, about the town's need to do this. So I appreciate the efforts to go through and do this, to close these out, because they really shouldn't be open any longer.
Right. So we should see this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We maybe not do it every year, but if we do a few, we might do some next year, because there's still some old ones that need
Right.
to be done. But, if we did it every other year or so, it's a very easy process. It's, this is it, to deauthorize. It looks better, on our official statements. It doesn't look like we're carrying projects over for a very long time. There's so many good reasons to do this.
This rolls up into our financials, right? So
Mhm.
it does make our ratios look better and so forth?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Our debt authorizations, when you look in the financials, will look a lot different next year. these are still on the books as of June 30. So the financial reports that we have coming out will include all of these, but next year,
Yep.
they'll be gone.
And with the project itself completed and actually accomplished, it really wouldn't make any sense to try
Correct.
to
Absolutely.
use the money. We'd be using it really for something else.
Right, we really shouldn't, we do often use money left over in authorization for other projects that match the reason for the authorization in the first place. If there was an HVAC issue at Baldwin and we've fixed that problem, and then something else happens at Baldwin from HVAC, we can utilize that money. But after a while, we really shouldn't be doing that. We should close these projects out and.
Which explains why some of these are still open, that you might say, well, those projects haven't happened since 2011 or 12, but the point is that there are, assuming that we have to go to it, but then there's
Yeah,
the
I think
tax.
over the last
tax
couple,
on the bond.
well, since I've been here, I think I've only authorized like less than $1,000 out of all of these
Yeah.
funds, really trying to consider them closed, even though we hadn't formally gone through the process.
So Mike's question, to be dredged again, was pretty interesting, though. What is kind of the measure that the project is completed to sort of speed up this life cycle and say, hey, it is time to deauthorize this bond issue as well?
It's
I
really
don't know if we
based
have
on
every
completion-
answer to that,
It's
but
really
that was a
based on
good question.
completion of the project. Now, if the project takes 20 years, it takes 20 years. I mean, not that it would, but, you can keep that authorization open for as long as the project is still ongoing.
How do we generally decide it's over? Just ask.
We have.
We just ask,
Yeah.
well,
That's the issue. We have not done a good job at that. This is the effort to start that process.
Okay, I mean, on my
Yeah,
job,
I
Mike's
admit
question
it,
was a
listen,
great question.
we have not done a good
Yeah.
job of closing these out.
And like I said, I've already
Veronica's
spoken-
been off the board for several years now, and she indicated that was a concern of hers back then. But now is the time, and we're starting the process.
There's probably several reasons for it. And, if there's any possibility having to go back into one of these authorizations, because there's a project that's been completed and there's something that happens, for example, Baldwin HVAC, and it gets repaired, but the authorization is still open, at least you could still go to that authorization and still be able to pull from it. The question is whether you said before, Matt, about the timeline. If you don't do it within that certain timeline, then you're
That's a different issue. But, and what happened was, several years ago, we started writing the bond resolution questions somewhat broadly, which gave us the discretion to use them for Baldwin HVAC and related projects, okay? So we wrote those bond authorizations so that they were flexible, all right? There are a couple of schools of thought on that, one of which is that gives you the ability to take care of some other things if you have excess funds or the projects don't cost as much as you had anticipated. And then it also gives you the ability to move within the funds if some projects cost more than you thought they were going to cost. So there was flexibility there. But I think the point that I want to drive home, this is the fourth time I've said it, is this is the start of an effort to clean these funds up. So.
Is there any thought to addressing the same concept to the town side?
absolutely, absolutely. This was step one, getting, these were the oldest bonds and the oldest fund, and a fund that we had, in a sense, closed anyway, in a sense, hadn't allowed access to so it was easy to close these out. I've already worked with Cliff on some of the ones in the current bond authorizations and the other fund that we know that we have already completed and we can start closing out as well. And on the town, both 216 and 217, you'll see both of those coming forward.
I see.
214 had some town authorizations. Those were already actually balanced to zero. It's the only reason you don't see them. But the majority of that fund was made up of Board of Ed. They just happen to be the ones that are here on the page. But you'll see on the next motion, I believe, in the detail I gave, you'll see some town money there as well. So it's not just because it's Board of Ed, it's, the concept applies to both.
Sure. Just wondered when it was coming down.
Whenever I next get to put that together, but we're already, like I said, we already started the process. Yeah, the first 3 projects for the Board of Ed are already closed, so we already know that those are 3 that we can do. So if you want them to be done as soon as possible, like, I can certainly get them done.
Well, thank you for doing this,
Yeah,
Mary Jane.
seems like an enormous amount of work.
Yeah.
Well worth it.
If there's nothing else, then I crafted a motion for this, so I'll entertain the following motion. To approve the closeout of the 7 capital projects totaling $2,874,963 as listed in the resolution provided under item 6 in the Board of Finance October 2019 agenda. There's no date on it, so I just went with that.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Right now, item number 7, discuss and take possible action to transfer $1,369.41 from fiscal year 10-11 Board of Education bond authorization to fiscal year 12-13 Board of Education bond authorization.
So the reason for this is when we went out this past August and authorized the bond to cover all of these projects, we don't do it to the penny. The financial advisors round your number up, so we only needed, $848,000, and we bonded $850,000 or so, and left this small amount in that fund. Since the majority of the items in Fund 214 are Board of Ed related, our bond counsel felt it was appropriate to transfer that revenue, because it is revenue, into the fund, into Fund 216 for the Board of Ed capital projects. So we're just moving that excess money left over from the bond authorization into another bonded Board of Ed account to bring Fund 214 to 0.
Sense to me. Any questions?
Seems to me as well.
Well, all
So
good?
moved.
Oh, well. You want the motion
There's
first?
something on the floor.
Oh, you have a motion?
It's right in my memo.
Yeah, whatever.
It's right in my memo. Veronica, right there in the
Well,
memo.
for officiality's sake, we know who's gonna make the motion, so we're just gonna, you all think about who's gonna second it, how's that?
I wrote it right there.
So, I think Veronica would like to entertain a motion to approve a transfer of $1,369.41 from the fiscal year 10-11 Board of Education bond authorization account 21432-57600 to the fiscal year 12-13 Board of Education bond authorization account 21647-57909. We got the first.
So moved.
And then we have a second somewhere?
Second.
All right, beautiful. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Item number 8, committee reports, the permits. Anything on permits? Item number 9. Sure.
You're aware.
Yeah.
The work that the subcommittee, Veronica participated in on building permit fees. Those new fees went into effect on Friday, the 18th of October. So for your purposes of budgeting, we'll have a couple of months' worth of data to look at related to next year's projections on building permit fees.
Great, thank you. So these building permits are reflective of the form, the prior fees, right, okay. Thank you. Item number 9, old business. I just wanted to, I went back to the from the minutes last month. The RFP for auditing services, I think it was mentioned that we would need to think about who would serve on that selection committee. I would like to entertain doing that and discussing and deciding that next month when we have our, there will be board changes. So I want to make sure that everyone's on board on that. So we'll wait until next month on that. Item number 10, new business. there's actually 2 items under new business. Number 1, and these are both have nothing to do with our Board of Finance minutes or anything else we've discussed today. I want to congratulate Megan and her husband Sean on their son Jack, who was born in between our 2 meetings. And you're here, and the fact that you're awake and you're here is pretty amazing.
I'm always awake. I'm always up.
I kept on looking over to see there'd be a little head drop, but there was nothing. You were right on board. So
Sleeper for the other
I'm
guy.
getting used to it. Yeah.
so on behalf of the board,
Thank
I
you.
wanted to congratulate you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 for new business. We have a member of our board who this is his last Board of Finance meeting, and I wanted to make sure it was noted. Ken McKenzie came on board in 2015, and you've been with us for
4 years?
for 4 years.
Went by fast.
It flew by.
Yeah.
It flew by. I just wanted to say on behalf of the Board of Finance, thank you for your service to the town on this board. I will say that I think we all agree that there was not full agreement, and it was always a collaborative spirit that you had with our board. We always had healthy discussions, regardless. And so I enjoyed serving on this board with you. And in honor of that, I wanted to ask our first selectman to come up. We have a little certificate of appreciation for you.
It's not a 6-pack of beer.
That's after the meeting, Ken.
Executive session.
I've said on many occasions that public service is a noble cause, and I've always believed you came to this endeavor because you thought you could make a contribution to this town, and sometimes make us think differently than we have thought in the past. But I want to personally thank you for your contributions. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and you know that. No, Ken, you made me think. You made me work, and you made me think, and I appreciate that. And on behalf of the town of Guilford, this certificate is awarded to Kenneth McKenzie with heartfelt thanks and appreciation for his dedication and service to the town of Guilford Board of Finance, 2015-2019, with the seal of Guilford.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you, Ken.
I won't hang it somewhere where the kids will shoot hockey pucks.
Anything else under new business? If not, I think that's how we have to end the meeting. So, well, actually, we have public forum, but there's no one in public forum. So we are we're going to end the meeting. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.